never thought 3 words could tear the air out of my lungs. Don't love me. They fell from Axel's lips like quiet gunfire, clean and final. The city lights behind him flickered against the rain-slick glass, blurring his face into something unreal, something I could almost pretend didn't hurt. But it did. God, it did. We've been best friends since we were 15, inseparable shadows running through crowded hallways and summer fields. But somewhere between shared laughter and long nights, I'd fallen for him. I never meant to. Love wasn't supposed to feel like this, like holding a blade by its edge, knowing it would bleed you out but gripping tighter anyway. Ryder, he said again, softer this time, as if my name was a plea. You have to stop. I wanted to ask why. Why stop something that had made me feel alive for the first time? Why stop loving the one person who made the world make sense? But the words burned on my tongue, and instead, I forced a laugh that cracked halfway through. Sure, I said. No problem. But even as I walked away, I knew I was lying. The weeks that followed were hell disguised as ordinary days. I tried to pretend, tried to rebuild myself out of things that weren't him. I buried myself in college classes, late-night shifts, and half-hearted dates that ended before they began. Every smile felt rehearsed. Every touch felt wrong. Axel didn't make it easy. He was still there, in my apartment, in my car, in the songs we used to scream to on the highway. He'd text me memes, random thoughts, or "You awake?" Messages at 2 a.m. as if nothing had changed. And because I was weak, I always answered. We'd still hang out sometimes, and those moments were worse than silence. Because every time he laughed, my heart betrayed me. Every time his eyes met mine, something inside me whispered, he feels it too. Maybe that's what hurt the most, not knowing if he ever did. It all came to a breaking point one night in late October. There was a party near campus, loud music, cheap beer, and the kind of chaos that makes you feel small. Axel was there too, leaning against the balcony rail, laughing with some girl whose name I didn't know. Her hand brushed his arm, and something inside me snapped. I shouldn't have cared. I told myself that, over and over. But watching her lean in, watching him smile that same soft smile he used to give me, I felt my chest close. I left before anyone could see the tears. Outside, the air was sharp with cold. I walked for hours with no direction, just the rhythm of my footsteps and the echo of his words chasing me down every street. Don't love me. But how do you stop loving someone who's stitched into your every memory? When Axel showed up at my door 2 nights later, I almost didn't open it. He looked different, tired like he hadn't slept. His hoodie was soaked from the rain, and his eyes carried that same reckless tenderness I used to dream about. Ryder, he said, breathless. Why'd you leave? Why do you care? I shot back. You said not to love you. I'm just doing what you wanted. He flinched like I'd slapped him. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The rain kept falling, soft and merciless. I didn't mean it like that, he finally said, voice trembling. I didn't want to ruin you. Ruin me? I laughed bitterly. You already did. He stepped closer, and for the first time, I saw fear in his eyes. Not the kind that comes from being hated, but the kind that comes from being understood. Do you know what it's like, he whispered, to want something you're not supposed to? To want someone so badly that you start hating yourself for it. My heart stopped. Because in that instant, I realized he wasn't scared of me. He was scared of us. I don't remember moving, but suddenly, I was standing right in front of him. The space between us was a single breath. The rain dripped from his hair onto my cheek, and for a second, it felt like we were suspended between 2 worlds, the one where we kept pretending, and the one where we finally stopped running. Axel, I said quietly, if you don't want me, say it, right now, and I'll walk away for good. He stared at me for a long time, every emotion he'd ever buried rising to the surface. His lips parted. His voice broke. I can't, he said. Because I do. The next second was chaos. A collision of years of silence, heartbreak, and longing crashing into one kiss that felt like both an ending and a beginning. His hands trembled against my face. Mine found the back of his neck. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't even safe. But it was real. When we finally pulled apart, the rain had stopped, and the city hummed softly around us. I don't know how to do this, he admitted. I don't know how to be what you need. I smiled through the tears. You don't have to be perfect, Axel. Just be honest. He nodded like a man stepping into sunlight for the first time. But love, especially ours, was never going to be easy. The world outside our small corner didn't understand. His parents wouldn't. Mine didn't either. There were whispers, judgments, and the constant fear that what we had was temporary. Still, every morning I woke up and saw him asleep beside me. I knew it was worth it. Every laugh, every quiet apology, every hand that reached for mine in secret, it all built something unbreakable between us. Because love, the real kind, isn't about perfection. It's about choosing someone even when it hurts. And maybe I hadn't stopped loving Axel after all. Maybe I never would. When I look back now, I think about that night he told me to stop loving him. How it felt like the end. But maybe it was the beginning, the moment we both learned that love doesn't disappear just because it's inconvenient. It doesn't ask for permission. It just is. And as he lies next to me now, breathing softly in the half-light, I realize something simple but true. He was never mine to lose. He was mine to find. Axel's hand found mine beneath the sheets, his fingers warm and trembling slightly, as if still unsure he was allowed to do it. The room was quiet except for the soft hum of the heater and the rhythm of his breathing. Morning sunlight crept through the blinds, striping golden bars across his bare shoulder. He turned to face me, eyes half open. You're staring again. I smiled. Can't help it. He groaned and buried his face into the pillow, laughing in that low, muffled way that always made my chest ache. You're impossible. Maybe, I said softly, brushing a thumb across his hairline. But you like it. He didn't answer, just reached up and caught my wrist, holding it against his chest where I could feel his heartbeat. It was fast, uneven, human. For a while, we stayed like that. Two people suspended in the fragile peace of a morning that felt borrowed. Because deep down, we both knew what waited beyond those walls. Questions, stares, the sharp edges of a world that didn't want to understand. Later that day, Axel had to visit his parents. He asked me not to come. I told him I understood, but the truth was, it still stung. We were building something real, but he still couldn't show me to the people who'd raised him. When he left, I sat by the window, watching the clouds crawl across a pale blue sky. My phone buzzed once, a text from him. Wish me luck. Always, I replied. Hours passed. Evening fell. The silence stretched until it hurt. When my phone finally lit up again, it wasn't a message. It was a call. His voice on the other end was tight, shaken. Ryder, I can't stay there. Can I come over? Of course, I said immediately. What happened? He didn't answer, just whispered, I'll explain when I get there. When he arrived, his eyes were red. Not from crying, but from trying not to. He dropped onto the couch and stared at the floor for a long time before speaking. They found a photo, he said finally, of us. My heart clenched. Which one? The one from the lake last summer. You remember. Your hand on my shoulder. I remembered everything about that day. The sunlight on the water. The way he'd smiled like he wasn't afraid of anything. What did they say? I asked. He swallowed hard. They asked if it was true. If I was like that. My dad couldn't even say the word. I reached for him, but he pulled back, shaking his head. I told them it was a joke, that it didn't mean anything. That hurt more than I wanted to admit. You didn't mean that. Of course I didn't, he said quickly. But I panicked. God. I didn't know what to do. The air between us thickened, filled with the weight of all the things we couldn't fix. I took a breath. You don't have to apologize. I get it. It's not easy. His eyes snapped to mine. You shouldn't have to get it. You shouldn't have to be anyone's secret. I'm not. I lied. I'm yours. That's enough. But even as I said it, I wasn't sure if I believed it anymore. That night, we didn't sleep much. Axel sat at the edge of the bed, his back to me, staring at the window as if the dark outside could give him answers. Do you ever wish you could just turn it off? He asked quietly. The way we feel? I hesitated. No, not even when it hurts. He nodded slowly, his shoulders tight. You're stronger than me. No, I said. I just learned how to survive without asking for permission. When he finally turned around, his eyes were glassy. I don't know if I can do this forever. Then don't think about forever, I whispered. Just think about tomorrow. He looked at me for a long moment, then lay down beside me, pressing his forehead to mine. His voice was barely audible when he said, Tomorrow, then. The next few months were a blur of small victories and quiet breakdowns. We learned how to move through the world like ghosts, touching hands under tables, glancing over shoulders before every kiss. It wasn't freedom, but it was something. He started sketching again. I'd find pages scattered around the apartment. Quick, messy lines of rooftops, faces, and sometimes me. He'd never admit it, but I could tell. You should sell these, I told him one night, flipping through his notebook. He shrugged. They're just sketches. They're beautiful, I said. He smiled a little. So are you. It was the first time he'd said something like that without hesitation. I didn't realize how much I needed to hear it until then. But love has a way of testing you when you start to believe you're safe. One evening, as we were leaving a small cafe downtown, someone from Axel's old high school spotted us. A guy named Mason. Loud, careless, and the kind who never forgot other people's secrets. He called out, Axel? Man, is that your boyfriend? The word hung in the air like a spark. People turned. I froze. Axel didn't answer. His jaw tightened, his hand slipped out of mine. Mason laughed, shrugged, and walked away, but the damage was done. Axel wouldn't look at me for the rest of the walk home. When we got inside, I closed the door behind us and said quietly, You don't have to hide. He turned, eyes burning. You don't get it, Ryder. You can afford not to hide. I can't. Not with my family, not with work, not with me. I cut in. He went silent. The words fell out of me before I could stop them. I'm tired of pretending we're just friends in public and lovers in private. I'm tired of watching you shrink to fit inside everyone else's expectations. Then maybe you should find someone braver, he said, voice sharp, almost cruel. That broke something in me. I stared at him, my throat tight. Maybe I will. He flinched, regret flashing across his face. But I couldn't stand there any longer. I grabbed my jacket and walked out, leaving him alone in the apartment that still smelled like our coffee and his cologne. For 3 days, neither of us spoke. I stayed with a friend, pretending everything was fine while replaying every word, every silence. I hated how much I missed him, how my body still reached for him in sleep. On the 4th night, there was a knock at the door. When I opened it, Axel was standing there, soaked again from the rain. Déjà vu. Only this time he wasn't trembling, he was broken. I don't want to be brave, he said, voice shaking. I just want you. Something inside me cracked open. He stepped closer, his hand hovering between us. I don't care what they think anymore. I'm done hiding. I looked into his eyes, really looked, and saw the truth there. Fear, yes, but also love, fierce and desperate and real. So I took his hand. and when our fingers intertwined again, it felt like coming home. The next morning felt different. The air itself seemed lighter, as if the world had been waiting for Axel to finally stop running. We ate breakfast in silence, both a little unsure what came next. The city outside buzzed faintly, indifferent to our quiet revolution. Axel sat across from me, fingers drumming the edge of his coffee mug. "I called my mom last night," he said finally. I froze. "And she wants to talk," he said. "In person." I swallowed hard. "Do you want me to come?" He shook his head. "Not yet. I need to do this first." His eyes met mine then, steady, no longer full of the familiar fear. But this time, I'm not going to lie. The hours that followed felt endless. I stayed home, pacing, pretending to read. Every time my phone buzzed, my heart leapt and crashed again when it wasn't him. When he finally called, his voice was rough but steady. I told them everything. I exhaled, relief and dread tangled together. How did they take it? There was a long silence. Then, quietly, "Not well." I could hear the sound of wind on the other end, the muffled hum of traffic. My dad walked out halfway through. My mom just cried, said she didn't raise me for this. My throat ached. "Axel." I told her it wasn't something she raised me for. It's just who I am. His voice cracked on the last word, and my chest tightened. "Do you want me to come get you?" "No," he said softly. "I need a little time." "Okay," I whispered, though everything in me wanted to run to him. "Ryder." "Yeah. Thank you for waiting." He came back just after sunset. I opened the door before he could knock, and he stood there, eyes red but calm, like a storm that had finally passed. Without a word, he stepped forward and pressed his forehead to mine. "They might never accept it," he murmured, "but I can't keep living for people who only love me when I'm pretending." My hands found his face. "You don't owe anyone a version of yourself that hurts to live in." He closed his eyes. "I know. I just wish it didn't have to cost so much." "It costs what it's worth," I said quietly. "And you're worth everything." We decided to move to a new apartment a few weeks later. Somewhere small but ours. It wasn't an escape. It was a beginning. The space was messy, the paint was chipped, and the water heater groaned every morning, but it felt alive. We filled it with music, takeout boxes, and nights spent laughing until dawn. Sometimes he'd sketch by the window while I read on the couch. Other times, we'd sit in silence, our presence saying what words couldn't. For the first time, the world didn't feel like something we were fighting against. But love isn't a straight line. Even peace can have cracks. One evening, Axel came home later than usual. He dropped his bag by the door, his shoulders tense. "What happened?" I asked. He hesitated. "Someone from work found my Instagram." My stomach dropped. "Did you post something?" He nodded. "Just a photo of us, nothing obvious. But they saw." "What did they say?" He let out a bitter laugh. "They asked if it was true. I didn't deny it this time." "That's good," I said cautiously. "Yeah, except now my boss wants to have a talk tomorrow." He sank onto the couch, running a hand through his hair. "I knew this would happen eventually. I just didn't think it'd feel like this." I sat beside him. "Like what?" "Like I'm always choosing between being honest and being safe." I reached for his hand. "You shouldn't have to choose." He looked up at me then, something fierce behind his tiredness. "Maybe not, but if it comes down to it, I'm done hiding." I smiled through the ache in my chest. "Then whatever happens, we'll face it together." The next day, he texted me from outside his office. "Going in. Wish me luck." I typed back, "Always." The hours crawled. I tried to distract myself. Cleaned the kitchen, reorganized books, made coffee I didn't drink. When he finally came home that evening, his face said it all. "They let me go," he said quietly. No explanation. Just said my position was being restructured. My hands curled into fists. "That's bullshit." He shrugged, but I could see the hurt underneath. It's fine. I'll find something else. Axel. He looked at me and I saw it, the flicker of doubt, the fear that maybe he'd made a mistake being open. You didn't lose your job because of who you are, I said firmly. You lost it because of who they are. He gave a small, tired smile. You always know what to say. Only because I've had to learn, I said softly. He leaned in then, resting his head against my shoulder. I'm scared, Ryder. I know, I whispered. Me too. But beneath the fear, there was something stronger, a quiet certainty that we were done apologizing for existing. The following week was hard. He applied for new jobs, most of which never called back. We started budgeting more tightly, cutting small luxuries, coffee dates, dinners out, even our internet plan. Still, every night we'd find something to laugh about. A dumb video, a burnt dinner, a memory of our high school days. Love, I realized, wasn't just grand gestures. It was survival with someone who made the struggle worth it. Then one afternoon, as I came home from work, I found him sitting at the table with his sketchbook open and a grin spreading across his face. I got it, he said, holding up his phone. What? The design studio downtown. They loved my portfolio. I blinked, stunned. Wait, you showed them your art? Yeah, he said, eyes shining. And they didn't care who I love. They just cared what I could create. I laughed, pulling him into a hug. That's because you're brilliant. He buried his face against my neck. We're going to be okay, aren't we? Yeah, I said. We are. That night, we celebrated with cheap wine and music blasting from an old speaker. Axel pulled me into a slow dance in the middle of the living room, the floor creaking beneath our bare feet. The lights were dim, the city glowing faintly through the window. He looked at me, his eyes soft and steady. You know, I used to think love was supposed to save you. And now, I asked. Now I think it's supposed to change you. I smiled. It changed both of us. He nodded, pressing his forehead to mine. For the better. Later, as we lay tangled together, I thought about how far we'd come. From two scared boys pretending not to feel, to two men who finally chose each other over fear. The world outside hadn't changed much. But inside that small apartment, we had built a universe of our own. A place where love didn't need to whisper, didn't need to apologize. Maybe that's what freedom really was. Not the absence of fear, but the courage to live anyway.